On the truck's arrival to Milan, an Italian sergeant began checking papers of our group. And at that time, the so-called Italian Republican Army were more vicious than the Germans ever were. Another stroke of luck, and I say the law of averages must have been suspended from me on that trip. While he was searching another person, I again slipped behind his back to join the ones that had been searched. I've never forgotten the address of that partisan. I got directions and took a streetcar to the magnificent Roman gate through which the street ran, found the address of a pastry shop where all sorts of cookies were being baked. You can imagine what that was like to hungry prisoners. I escaped. I asked the proprietor if he knew the person I was looking for, and he indicated he did. Went to look for him. Returned, said the man was no longer there, and asked what I wanted. I decided to tell him who I was, and if he could not help me, not turn me in. And of course he laughed and said he would help, and that he really did. He got me the appropriate passes by bribing some officials, got me a new set of clothes, and put me up in an unoccupied department in a partially bombed out building. And one of my fondest memories was a twice daily streetcar ride between the apartment and the bakery which passed in front of El Duomo, that magnificent multi-spired cathedral of Milan. About 2 weeks later, DeMarco, my savior in a way, by prearrangement, took me by train to Lake Como on the Swiss border to the home of a Turkish woman who was a friend of his and with whom he had arranged for a guide to take me to the Swiss border. Late that night, after eating and drinking bottled wine, we embraced and bid each other goodbye. The guide led me about 2 miles up a mountainside to a chicken wire fence, which marked the border. He lifted the bottom of the fence and I crawled under into freedom and walked into the brightly lit up little town of Ponte Chiasso in the Italian-speaking canton of Switzerland. And this was the first lighted town I had seen in Europe during the war. I went to the police station and gave myself up, and then the next day taken by train to Bellinzona, the capital of the province, and I had hoped to there contact the American consulate, but to my dismay was prevented from doing so and was submitted to intense interrogation by the Swiss officers, who concluded that I was an Italian. And I always felt that the Swiss were partial to the Germans. Besides, I had foolishly retained the false papers DeMarco had procured for me, and the interrogator concluded that I was not an American, and he said that I would be interned. And I was beside myself with anger and frustration, and remonstrated vigorously. Finally caught the attention of a Swiss major, who laughed at me and said, "Don't worry, we'll send you to Geneva. The American embassy staff will know whether you're an American." True to his word, the next day he took me to the train station and with a Swiss soldier escort sent me to Geneva. The following day was transported by truck to Lyon, and from there by DC-3 to Paris, where I was completely debriefed and learned that Al Vogel and a companion of his had both escaped. I had helped him escape from that camp actually, and it took them about a month to get out. But they were on their way to the States. As you can imagine, I gorged myself with American food to such an extent that I became ill, but it was worth it. And I wandered around Paris for 2 days and boarded a C-54 for the flight via the Azores, Bangor, New York, and finally Washington. And when we landed in Bangor, Maine, I got on my knees and hands and kissed the earth of the wonderful land that I never thought I'd see again. And I thought of those lines from Sir Walter Scott's play of The Last Minstrel, where he says, "Breathes there a man with soul so dead, who never to himself has said, 'This is my own, my beloved land,' whose heart has ne'er within him burned when home his footsteps he has turned from wandering on some foreign strand. If such there be, go mark him well. For him no rapture minstrel swell. High though his title, proud his name, boundless his wealth to which could live. I suppose all the veterans returning felt the same with Abe. And with that, I conclude my remarks by reminding you what George Santayana, the philosopher, said: those who are unmindful of the lessons of history will be doomed to repeat its mistakes. Thank you very much.